I'm Lucia Cristea, and I'm very happy to be your host today. I'm the Managing Director of European Integrated Projects. It is a consultancy based in Bucharest, Romania, and in an office in Italy, where actually I am at this moment. Now, I'm very pleased that we have the chance to discuss the challenges facing cities in bridging the gap between the ambition and reality, as I said earlier. In my work with cities across Europe and beyond, I had the privilege to meet high-level decision makers and politicians that presented in very modes the visions for their cities. While I was impressed with their plans and vision, looking back, only few of them managed to get closer to their vision implementation. So why was this? What were the main challenges that they have faced? In general, their plans are trying to reach high-level aims, so it was a pressure from different directions for them to succeed. Today, we talk about decarbonization, and this week within this conference, and the imminent impact on our lives in case we do not decide today to change ourselves, the way we behave, and to adjust our expectations to what it is possible to achieve. I'm privileged to have three excellent speakers today in this panel that will present their insights from their experience and work and their plans, in fact. So please allow me to introduce you Professor Peter Jones, OBE. Peter Jones is professor in UCL. Peter is a world-renowned mobility thinker. It's very difficult to present Peter, please believe me. He led a series of very important research projects Thank you, Peter. And few of them I have been involved, and I'm delighted to work with him. And I will look forward for Peter to share our insights from his recent work and how the integration of different sector policies could accelerate the decarbonization or could influence the acceleration of decarbonization. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair, and welcome everybody to this session. Thank you for joining us. So broadly, achieving zero carbon in the transport sector, I think we all recognise is a massive challenge. Change is possible. We've seen it historically, and I'll explain that in a minute. And obviously, during COVID, we've seen quite substantial changes in the short term. But what we're talking about for decarbonisation is this challenge on a much larger scale. It requires the development of long-term transition pathways, but transport can't solve transport problems alone. Decarbonisation heavily relies on, first of all, electrification of the vehicle fleet, which means in cooperation with electricity generation and distributing organisations, but also in collaboration with the many non-transport sectors that generate and attract travel demand. If we look back, briefly, I'll talk about the CREATE project. If we look back historically, we can see that city authorities have faced different policy priorities and challenges over past decades. Air quality impacts and road safety have grown in importance in policy terms over time. And obviously, the big new issue in many countries and cities is global warming and the medium to long-term elimination of carbon dioxide emissions, both from transport and more widely. And I'll be talking about CREATE, but also Sump Plus is the current project Lucia and I are working on that's helping cities to address these issues. The point I want to make first of all is that the policy perspectives taken by politicians and city authorities shape cities. So historically, we can see when cities saw their role as trying to accommodate increasing car ownership use, they built roads, they provided more car parking, they lowered densities and they decentralized. When cities put their minds to promoting sustainable mobility, they focused on public transport, cycling networks, and reallocating road space for reserve bus and cycle lanes, for example. And when cities are focused on wanting to be cities of places, they put much more emphasis on public realm, on promoting street activities, on actively restraining traffic levels and promoting mixed-use development. But we can see these changes can be quite dramatic over time. So the left-hand side, we can see Rio, when it was promoting car development. It had a flyover system there right through one of the central parts of the city as recently as 2011. And then by 2050, they had all been taken out and replaced with a big open public space. We can say the same thing in Seoul as well. They built over a river to provide fast car access into the city centre. And then more recently, they took it all out, reopened up the river and changed things. So the cities, when they were focusing on being there for cars, they had one structure. When they changed that to being cities of place, they had a very different structure. And of course, they invested large amounts of money in those overpasses, which subsequently they then took out at great expense. And what we can see in these cities, that these stages tend to be sequential: car, mobility, placemaking. And as part of that, we can see it also affects patterns of travel behaviour. Growing car use when you provide for cars, levelling off when you start promoting alternatives and restricting growth in capacity, and actually an active decline in car use when you actually restrain traffic. And these were the 5 cities that were involved in the CREATE project. And we can see on the axis the number of car trips per trip maker per day. And you can see they all peaked in the late 1990s, and since then have gone down by up to 30%. So change is possible if policy priorities change and policy measures change. In SUMP Plus, what we're trying to do is to build on the European SUMP 2.0 guidance to support decarbonisation in 2 ways. Essentially, one is developing a longer-term transition pathway that extends well beyond the normal SUMP cycle to address issues such as climate change and zero carbon. In the process, placing a greater emphasis on city visioning and placemaking. And the second major thing is to encourage cross-sector cooperation, for example, between municipalities and local tourist industry, as such sectors have a strong influence on mobility patterns. And we're addressing these issues, particularly in one of our case studies in Britannia. So many of you will be familiar with this. The SUMP cycle has these 12 stages, and essentially what we can say is that if we take transport planning in most cities, it's typically a 5 to 10 year process. So a sample is over 10 to 5 to 10 years. UK, we have local transport plans. In the EU, more widely, they use sustainable mobility planning, but it's basically the same thing. And what we're trying to do, as I say, is essentially to look at the out to 2050 to take a 30-year horizon and look at a broad transition pathway. Within that, a series of shorter-term implementation strategies. And schematically, this is what we're attempting to do. So on the left-hand vertical axis there, we have the extent to which objectives and targets have been achieved from 0 to 100%. The horizontal axis is time, and the top right-hand corner there is where we want to be in terms of our vision for the future city, including decarbonisation. And then what we see is a trajectory from now out to there to ensure we can achieve those outcomes, which involves a policy mix of various different types of policies: restraint policies, promotion policies, new investment, construction policies, and so on. But having sketched out roughly what we think we need to do over time to achieve that end case, then we have to do backcasting to actually see that we will be able to get from here to there by making sure that it will work from the end point backwards. Recognizing also that the path will not be smooth. There'll be points where not very much activity takes place, but then there'll be triggers of change and windows of opportunity where there's scope for radical change, as indeed COVID has given us. In terms of practical terms, here's an example from Greater Manchester, where they've done various scenario planning to look at how they can get down to carbon zero and what will be needed to achieve that. And a more specific example taken from a study commissioned by our Royal Town Planning Institute recently. I was looking at a series of scenarios about how we would get emissions down to zero. And we can see they've identified different things. What will happen if you do nothing? In fact, they will increase. But then what you can do is to substitute trips, promote shift modes, switch fuels, and do a variety of things to get down to the ultimate budget. So it's a question of looking at the whole process and what different things can achieve to get you to the end goal and what the phasing of those needs to be as well. In terms of cross-sector, the cross-sector side, it's generally recognised, I think, that achieving carbon net zero in the transport sector will not be achieved just through electrification. There'll need to be a reduction in the total distance travelled overall. Now, most passenger and freight transport demand originates outside the transport sector. So transport investment and operation mainly serves the need of the wider economy and society. And historically, when these other organisations and sectors have developed their business models and service delivery plans, they've really taken full account of the external costs they're imposing on the transport system. So, for example, in the UK, many years ago, education policy changed so that parents could choose to send their child to any school, which led to longer trips, more by car, less possibility of walking, cycling. The health sector has also concentrated specialist healthcare at fewer greenfield sites, which again has meant longer trips for patients and staff, and also fewer opportunities to travel by sustainable modes. And here's a framework of different ways in which different sectors and organisations actually deliver their services. Down the left-hand column there, it can be through physical fixed facilities, through mobile facilities, delivering services into people's homes, or actually providing direct provision within homes. And if we look at physical facilities, they can be local or strategic sites, meaning a small number of very large sites or a large number of smaller sites. That obviously affects catchment areas, affects trip lengths and mode of choice. With mobile facilities, the actual services move around, whether it's banking or doctors or dentists, to local communities, and that means people can access them on foot, but obviously the availability is limited in time. We can deliver things to people's home, we can deliver personal services, we can have home care, we can have nurses, social services, hairdressing. That means no household trip, but obviously personal trips to the home. And goods deliveries, we can deliver food, medicine and things. And again, it gets rid of a household trip, but at the expense of a freight delivery trip, which may or may not be more efficient in carbon terms overall. And also possibilities provision within the home. So obviously we take for granted having cookers, washing machines and things, but people that don't have to travel somewhere to access, be able to use those facilities. And also digital infrastructure, which obviously we're making use of today. Computer internet connection avoids household trips. Although again, we know increasingly that actually the internet and the cloud computing and all that actually uses at the moment quite large amounts of carbon. And essentially we can look at all these things across the different sectors, for example, retail, health, education, tourism, and look at how we can, for each of those sectors, look at the extent to which there's a need to travel to a facility personally, or whether things can be delivered to the home or carried out within the home itself. In terms of a practical example, our National Health Service in England, as many of you will know, last December set out a target of achieving net zero carbon by 2045, based on the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and the World Resources Institute greenhouse gas carbon accounting, in which they did scope 1, 2, 3 and went beyond scope 3 to actually include patient visitor travel. And they estimated of all the emissions that their activities produce, 14% comes from travel, and they're taking responsibility for dealing with them. So to conclude, historically, many cities have been able to achieve large reductions in car use through appropriate policy packages, although over a longer timescale than we have to address now. To get to 2050, where we need to be, we will need to take the long view with a transition pathway over that period and implementation strategies, a series of interim ones. But to do this, cross-sector, private and public sector cooperation is essential. Business delivery models need to change in order to ensure that we meet our transport and other carbon targets. The greenhouse gas auditing framework provides a common basis for all to work to. It aligns objectives, metrics, and avoids externalization, where people simply effectively export their carbon to another sector. So achieving zero carbon in the transport sector is a massive challenge, but I think it can be done in partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. Very interesting as always, you know, working with you. I know your ideas, but I think they are so interesting, and I think the debate around these ideas will be very interesting. So can I encourage the audience to put questions in the chat function, yeah, and we will take them at the end of the presentations. Once again, thank you very much for this presentation, and allow me to invite our next panelist, Valentin Mureșan from Timisoara. He's he's a very interesting person to be part of this session. Being Romanian, I think Timisoara is one of the most exciting cities to be in this moment in Romania. Valentin has an interesting background. He worked in the private sector, you know, in IT. He was a high-level executive. You know, he was the general manager of Intel in Romania. And recently he took the challenge to be the personal advisor of Mayor of Timisoara for the smart cities. So Vali, please, the microphone is yours.
Thank you. You can hear me, yeah? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm coming from a IT and technology background, and I've been doing that for some time, mainly in hardware. But altogether, I think technology is something that should facilitate a lot of our objectives day to day, but also strategic and so on. And one new topic since I joined the City Hall of Timisoara was this idea of digital twin, which is pretty new. Just think of the same city sampled, sample meaning like turning our, let's say, environment and day-to-day life into digital values. And all these digital values sampled with a certain frequency would give a digital twin of our city. Obviously, this is the idealistic view at the moment, because I don't think many cities can pretend to have it, but this concept is coming by. And Timisoara is one of the let's say top 5 cities in Romania, with about 500,000 population, with the metropolitan area altogether, is coming a bit from behind, but with the new vision to engage both the community together with using technology to achieve and catch up with the new smart city trend. So bear with me, I'm from a technology, smart city, digital angle, but I'm not a mobility expert, but I can sense what's going on in terms of everything is actually happening these days with Europe and this Green Deal strategy. So imagine the city as a big kind of ocean of sensors. They don't have to interfere with our life, but they should be able to sense our environment and things going on around. And you know, this can be ranging from smart buildings, sensors on our cars, and waste management solutions and so on. And it's about sensors. That's what smart city is about, is an infrastructure to sense your town. The digital twin is actually the set of data sampled historically and hopefully as real time as possible soon. Right, so what I'm going to tell you about is our recent experience on this objective, and I'm going to tell you what's the context and what we plan to do in this context. So yeah, I don't know how much you know about Timisoara, but it's where revolution started almost 32 years ago, and it's a very multicultural place. It's going to be the European Capital of Culture in 2023. So there is a lot of good energy coming towards Timisoara and a lot of focus. And we are coming from obviously a communist time now, 30 years after, but still going and undergoing deep, I'd say, structural changes. It has a lot of potential. It's one of the main automotive/IT hubs in Eastern Europe. And as I mentioned, you know, with all this development and kind of richness in opportunities, we come across problems like the mobility as well. Okay, so that's what we basically are trying to face. It's this new context. I don't know, for those who don't know yet, we recently changed the leadership in Timisoara with the last local elections, and historically we basically made the first, say, of the political precedents here. We have a German-born mayor, Dominik Fritz, and I think the promise there was about the vision, and obviously the hope is that a lot of the citizens and the community will engage on that vision and follow the new strategy. And the new strategy is basically shifting from the car-oriented mobility that we had until recently. The former mayor has invested a lot in making broader roads and so on, whereas Dominik is actually coming from the new EU perspective and saying, okay, why don't we try to be a bit wiser with our day-to-day life, so that we basically breathe fresher air and hopefully have greener surroundings. And that's a huge shift. Obviously, we are not prepared for this shift at the moment, but we are building slowly all the foundations for this. And it's going to take time. It's taking time in other more advanced cities in Europe, I'm sure. But yeah, it's going to take time in our case as well. And the approach we want to take here is to actually make educated decisions. So we don't have much time for trial and error, and even if it's trial and error, it's going to be hopefully like a prototype level. It's about being able to gather enough data about our town, about our mobility, if that's something we want to fix. And then based on this data, to be able to actually engage with the community and explain with data what works, what doesn't work, and what should work in future, right? And this digital twin is one of our tools we want to build. That's why we joined a recent EU initiative. It's called Living in EU, which actually pretty much preaches this concept of using the digital copy of our town to actually analyze, find patterns, see the problems in those patterns, bring solutions, and measure and monitor what's their impact. And that's why we are at the moment designing the architecture of our digital twin. In parallel, we hope with the new EU funding is going to come in the new cycle lining up, that we are going to basically invest money in the smart city infrastructure that is, as I said, an ocean of sensors that capture data about our town, which is going to get into this digital twin design. And then on top of that, we plan to build tools that will utilize us with like let's say a simulator type of models that basically will tell you what happens if we do something before we actually have to test it in reality. Okay, so basically that's where we stand at the moment, and we also have let's say a parallel thread, a part of our vision, which is engaging the community in the co-design of various ingredients that basically help us build the foundation towards the new vision. And I think these two things work very well, like enough data to analyze and become more knowledgeable about the problems we try to solve, and the open governance. I know it's sometimes hard to build that culture, and it takes also time, but it's as we said, we think the new vision is more about changing behaviors and mindsets rather than building bricks and mortar solutions. And yeah, that's where we focus on now. Obviously, you know, there is a lot of learning and kind of checking if the steps we plan to make are going to stick. But that's two threads I'm involved, and I'm watching, and I'm loving, like my two children. One is the digital twin of our city, and the other one is making sure that we get the community engagement here. Obviously, it has to be good quality and relevant. So this is a stack of what we are going to build, like tools on top of the smart city sensor infrastructure. Obviously, we have to make sure that we have a good communication across, and also involving citizens in a kind of crowdsourcing model. Process the data, and based on that, learnings from this data, to be able to engage the community and the stakeholders, you know, public transportation and so on, in applications that start to make sense and say, okay, what happens if we do this? And let's try now to see how it works. It works, you know, good enough. Let's adopt it and so on. Okay, so just a bit of a conclusion here. Will that work? As Peter was mentioning, you know, it's not a kind of picnic. This is something that you have to kind of continuously invest on. It's going to be a transformation. It's going to be a behavioral sort of a change. In our case in Timisoara, because we come from a very bureaucratic system, the administration is quite bureaucratic, the bet works out well because it's also a sort of a digital transformation that we are engaging in order to make things be more impactful. But yeah, the digital twin will be, let's say, the nexus of all these smart city sensors and the interactions with the citizens. We don't want, so don't be scared, like we don't want to adopt the technology for the sake of technology. We adopt technology for the sake of the citizens, and the focus is on the citizens, so that we make them believe that, you know, the solutions we bring along are in their own benefit. And obviously, one of the key, let's say, goals is quality of environment as one important component of the overall quality of life, and decarbonization is the key there. But as I mentioned, we have started to build the infrastructure to kind of catalyze various groups of professionals who can discuss and bring solutions. and the city hall is trying to establish this infrastructure, be it digital infrastructure or kind of consultation infrastructure. And as I said, it's important that everyone feels the benefit and everyone finds their own place in this larger picture of our town, and where they can contribute. I know it sounds idealistic, but the focus is on building towards progressing in those directions. So, Lucia, this is pretty much what I wanted to say. Thanks for the attention, and looking forward to answering your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Valentin. And I'm really pleased that you are part of the Timisoara team now, and I'm really looking forward to see how you implement all these actions and ideas that you have, and looking forward to working with you in this project. Thank you once again, and indeed I can encourage the audience to put questions for Valentin here. I saw that already it is a bit of a discussion in the chat box, so I encourage you to discuss. As mentioned, I will take the questions at the end of the presentation. So can I invite Vali, if you can stop sharing the screen, and can I invite the third presenter, a dear friend from Sofia in Bulgaria, Metodi Avramov. We know him for a long time, and we have been working with him. In fact, he was part of the, let's say, the sounding board in Create project, one of the cities that we work with, to create and to validate the ideas in Create project that Peter mentioned earlier. Metodi is the director of the Strategies on Innovations and International Projects of Sofia Urban Mobility Center, and together with his colleagues is responsible for development and implementation of the urban mobility projects, plans and programs in the capital of Bulgaria. It is a vibrant city, and I know that they have done a lot of interesting things. So looking forward to hear your plans, Metodi. Thank you. Microphone is yours. Now something happened.
Just to unmute myself. Hello.
Yes.
challenges of the live broadcasting.
Yeah. And yes, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation. Good afternoon to everybody. Please, it's Sofia time. It's Bulgaria time. It's afternoon. Once again, thank you for the invitation. I will present some of the exciting things which are happening in transport and mobility in Sofia, which we hope will help us to achieve decarbonization. First, few words for Sofia. Sofia is the capital of Bulgaria, with a population of over 1.3 million inhabitants, and these are only the registered inhabitants. Being a capital, we have a lot of commuters from the neighborhood villages and cities. In terms of mobility and transport, being a capital, it's a challenging. Sofia accounts for 40% of the Bulgaria's gross domestic product, and in terms of public transportation, over 500 million trips per year. This was the last pre-pandemic year, 2019. As you are aware, these are now very challenging times for public transportation everywhere, and we hope soon to have the same number of trips as we have before the pandemic. Motorization rate, it's more than 650 cars per 1,000 inhabitants, which is above the average for the European Union metropolitan areas. And one other specific indicator, we have 30,000 on-street short-term parking spaces. As a transport policies, the priorities are related to the public transport, to the parking management, cycling, and e-mobility, which are considered as the main factors for achieving less carbon emissions. The modal split as you can see, still public transportation is the main mode of transport in Sofia. Relatively low share for cycling, especially with the new modes of micromobility. This year we will keep in mind that this model split was also calculated during the pandemic times. So this year we plan in October to measure again the model split share in order to see if some of the policies which we undertake in short and long term are working for actually encourage the use of sustainable mode of transportations. As a public transport, this is the backbone of our transport system. Sofia is having 4 modes of transport: metro, tram, bus, and trolleybus transport. With having during the past years constantly increasing the share of environmentally friendly and low carbon vehicles for the bus fleet of Sofia. Over the years, we gradually increase the number of vehicles which are less polluting. The goal is up to 2030, all of the public transport bus fleet to meet the requirements of 100 to meet the Euro 6 standard for emissions. The new project which we are undertaking and I would like to share is the electric bus. We have 20 electric buses which are with normal batteries, let's say buses which operates with overnight charge of the battery in the depot. But I would like to share this ultra capacitor electric bus project. We have 15 of these buses now in operation. The concept is different than the overnight charging in the depot. The concept is that the bus is charging the capacitor at the both final stops along the route. This allows the bus to operate with passengers, and there is no necessity of long overnight charging. The disadvantage is that you have to charge this vehicle at the both final stops in order to be able to operate with passengers. So far, the project is successful, and we are considering to buy 15 more such ultra capacitor electric buses. Hydrogen technology is also under consideration. That's why with Bulgarian Academy of Sciences, we are making some pilot project for extend the mileage of existing trolleybus, adding a fuels hydrogen cell in the electric engine of the trolleybus. Sofia Metro is now currently the backbone of the public transport system. 4 lines are in operation for a total length of 52 kilometers with 47 stations, and the future plans is up to 2025 to have more than 60 kilometers. And the share of this mode of transportation in the mix of public transport modes to have more than a half, meaning 650,000 passengers per day to be carried by the metro system in Sofia. Few words for the tariff policy. In 2016, Sofia Municipal Council adopted new tariff policy in order to encourage people to use more public transportation. Thus, the single ticket price was raised, and the yearly pass price was decreased to 365 Bulgarian leva, meaning that passenger could make unlimited number of trips only for 1 left per day, which is 50 euro cents. Green ticket is also applied in days with high levels of PM10. So far, the white ticket, which is free public transportation, if there are extreme levels of PM10, is not introduced, but it is an option. Sofia Municipal Council took this decision in order to encourage people to use public transportation, especially in days with high levels of pollution. And a few words for the new ticketing system in Sofia. This is a brand new project which is in operation since May this year. That's why we consider it as a very it's a project with priority for increased usage of public transportation in Sofia. The project has a lot of history and background, but this year it came into force. The new ticketing system is installed in all public transport vehicles, more than 1,000 public transport surface vehicles, trams, trolleybus, and buses, and all of the metro station in Sofia. What is new actually is for Sofia is that you can actually pay for your travel directly on the validators in the public transport vehicles. You can use bank cards, and for those of you who are familiar with London public transport and the daily cap, and yes, in London there is also a weekly cap. In Sofia, we also introduced the daily cap since 1st of September, since this month, September 2021. So no matter of how many trips the passenger is making, paying with his or her bank card, at the end the amount charged will be only the amount for a daily pass, which currently is 4 Bulgarian levs or 2 euros. This is one of the new features of the system, allowing more people to use public transportation. They do not need a special public transport contactless card. They can use their bank cards to pay for the trip. The web services are also one of the new features, which we hope to attract more passengers to public transportation. Online, everybody could load whatever or buy whatever transport product is available, depending for regular tariff or for preferential passes, students, pupils, retired people. Everything is now online, and also there is a possibility to pay for the single trip and daily pass with the mobile phone as a mobile ticket. All of these are really important features and are encouraging people to use the public transportation. One of the new options actually and functions this system is giving us is the analytic functions of the system. The system operates CCTV cameras in all public transport vehicles in Sofia, and based on the cameras, the system allows us to measure crowding and occupancy monitoring in each vehicle of the public transportation. This is giving us a lot of options and variety of options for intervention and for analysis and for change the public transport network in order to make it more optimized and more suitable, more comfort for the passengers. Just few examples based on these cameras in vehicles. We have vehicle occupancy. We have this for line segments, for time of the day, between stops, at any stop, per line segments, so we can make a lot of optimization and proposals for change of the schedule and frequency of public transport vehicles. We have this historical statistics for any line in any specific time slot during the working day or the weekend. So we are aware of the crowding and occupancy in vehicles of the public transportation in Sofia. This is giving us the solutions to have more precise real-time public transport information for passengers, meaning that we have the journey planner having the options which are, I think, valid everywhere. If you use any journey planner, you know that the journey planners are having options for a fastest route, for a least walking, or for least transfers, or for depending on the price or the tariff. Now, having this occupancy monitoring in the vehicles, we will implement in the real-time journey planner some options related to social distancing and COVID in COVID pandemic times. We could present in the journey planner low occupancy alternatives, or if the passenger wants to have this specific lines using for the route, low occupancy time of this selected route. We think this will help some of the passengers who are actually avoiding public transportation now due to reasons related to the pandemic times, now to use public transportation and not too afraid to use it and to plan their journey with not with car but with public transport. Electronic information boards, more than 1,300 boards, are showing exact time when vehicle will arrive at these stops in Sofia. So this was in brief for the public transportation. The other topic as a priority is the parking management. So far in Sofia, there are two short-term paid parking zones, so-called blue and green zone. Blue zone is more central zone, and green zone is peripheral zone to the city center. What is important as a policy, I have one slide later for this, but electric vehicles park for free in these short-term paid parking zones. We have a variety of options for payment. The new one, actually, the newest one, is the Viber chatbot, which appears to be very attractive and used by a lot of young people who are having their mobile phones ready to use for and also ready to pay for the parking zone directly with the mobile phone. These channels are particularly interesting during the pandemic times, because they are we have this opportunity to have a service, and passenger or a user of the parking zones is not necessarily needed to visit ticket office of the mobility company in order to pay for the trip or to pay for the parking. Park and ride, we are encouraging those who are using public transportation. That's why people, passengers with monthly passes, quarterly monthly passes, or yearly passes are park. They can park for free in all of the park and ride facilities along the metro stations. For the electric vehicles, fully electric vehicles are exempted from the paying local tax, and as I said, they park for free in the short-term paid parking zones. These are entirely local initiatives for encouraging electric mobility. Still nothing on the national level for encouraging electric vehicles, but the city of Sofia is encouraging the use of zero, because this incentives are only for fully electric vehicles, not for hybrids. So again, fully electric vehicles are parked for free in the city of Sofia. Few words for the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan of Sofia municipality. The goal is till 2035, 80% of the trips to be made by sustainable means of transport, walking, cycling, and public transportation. A few words for the what is next. InWare project. This is a European Commission project. We will test on-demand green public transportation with mini electric buses. Based on these trials, we will consider to have more on-demand public transportation in other places, feeding the tram network or the metro network with the green public transportation. Last but not least, I would like to share that a few days ago, Sofia was a finalist for European Green Capital Award. Unfortunately, we didn't win. Congratulations to Tallinn. But anyway, we will continue to apply this award and actually shows the support of European Union for the green policies and projects we implement in order to be more ecological and to help us to achieve decarbonization. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Method. A very interesting presentation, and really, in the last few years, you changed the face of Sofia. So good luck with your new projects, and really looking forward to come and visit you there in Sofia as soon as it is possible.